I'm Coach Tarek.
And I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Paul.
We are your movement experts, and we are here to educate health and fitness professionals with the tools to create real change for and within the industry.
Hi guys, Paul here from Purpose Driven Movement. Today with Vanessa to talk about a recent conversation you had with someone who I don't know a whole lot about, but I'm really looking forward to getting to know, Clare Hozack.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I've been really lucky to know Clare for a little while, and we were chatting just before our intro about how everyone in the fitness industry at a certain level, you tend to know each other, or you've seen some familiar faces. And I'm pretty sure I met Clare the first time when she was instructing me in a pre and postnatal course, and she was incredible. From there, I just kept in contact, and we would always bump into each other at conferences, and I'd watch her speak. And when I was a manager at Big Box Gym, I would get her in to coach my instructors or my coaches about pre and postnatal and training women. Instead of going really deep into that kind of how do we train mums, we actually took a different tactic, and I wanted to ask her about her personal story because it's quite interesting. She used to be an athlete in sailing. So it's not a super common sport that we hear about. Her journey from, training at a really high level and how she had to train and what's really changed in terms of elite training for females from when it was happening with her to how she would go about training athletes now, and the needs that are really important to be considered for training females in that space as well.
Yeah, because that's something like, I've been doing this for 20 plus years now. And yeah, the way that females have been trained, and also the amazing change in pre and postnatal training that's come across in the last 20 years has been something to behold. I'd be really interested to hear that.
A really interesting person to follow because a little like me, she's a little bit unconventional. She does a lot of power plate vibration training. She's done a lot of, fascial work around how to help people with scars and birth trauma, and really, really interesting. And she's very candid, right? She's so candid, and she's really open about her story. And I think that's really great to have someone who's just not embarrassed to really say their piece about it.
Yeah, which is going to be great because one of the best things I heard about being a mum, and obviously I can't identify as that, my wife can very well, is once you're postnatal, you're always postnatal. So I think listening to her podcast is going to give, she's candid about it. So it gives the trainers a real insight into what actually really happens, but then also something that they can use for the clients for basically for the rest of their careers. So that should be a really cool podcast to get stuck into.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you to listen. All right, let's go. Welcome back to Purpose Driven Movement Podcast. I am Vanessa, your host for today, and I am so glad to have Clare Hozack with me. Welcome, Clare. So nice to have you. I'm going to say back. For people who are listening at home, this is our take 2. We tried the first time, it glitched, but we have Clare back. So no glitches today. We love tech because it allows us to be here with each other. We're starting in. I'm going to throw straight to the first question. In your intro, we heard about your sailing career. First part of the question, what got you into sailing, and how did you get yourself into such a high level with it?
So I actually started sailing relatively late. My dad and my sister used to go out on the weekends, and I never went because I didn't want to get dirty. I had my little dresses on, and I used to have my nose in a book. And there was just a period of time, I think Heather was sick or couldn't make it. And Dad's like, please get on the boat, help me. And I was captivated. I don't know if it was from that very first session, but I remember coming in off the water, being able to pinpoint what I had learned. And as a 13, 14-year-old, I was already very sort of intoxicated when I learned something. I loved that feeling of new knowledge, expanding my brain and new experiences. So I don't think I ever got off the boat after that. I'm not sure what Heather did, to be honest, because I think I did the rest of the season, and then Dad bought me a boat. He always said he would always pay for education and sport. Those were our family values. And so I picked the most expensive sport I could, and true to his word, he paid for it. He bought me a boat, and I did as well as I could in that. When I outgrew it, I went to the next one. And I think that constant sort of thirst or learning experience is what took me to, I think I ended up second to the girl that represented in the 2004 and 2008 Olympics. just because I worked hard, I actually wasn't a great sailor. I just worked hard and went out and enjoyed the learning. I loved watching. So we'd go out for 3 hours and then I'd come in off the water and we would watch that footage back and like pick our mistakes, and that expansion sort of mindset I've always loved. Not as much fun when you do it to yourself as a parent.
That's incredible though. Like, well, you know, feedback is such a massive part of learning. And, you know, a lot of humans are so nervous to get that level of feedback about themselves because they're kind of scared of their own mistakes, right? But you literally just dove straight in, for lack of a better term. How did you go about, like, why did you want to go in and fix those mistakes?
I don't know, but I can tell you one of my biggest frustrations with being a woman is that people don't let me learn. So, for example, I had a flat tire when I was at uni and I was halfway home and someone waved me down. It was flat. So I pulled over and I had been taught how to do it. But a man pulled up behind me and instead of saying, "How can I help?" he sat down beside me and physically got in my space, shoved me out of the way and did it for me. And that, like, I've got 100 stories like that just over and over again of being held back and then being told I should be grateful because they helped me. You know, I get thanks for helping me, but they didn't help. They took over and they took away my opportunity to learn and grow and develop.
Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting and frustrating.
But to this day, I can rig a windsurfer on the side of a river or a lake or an ocean, and there'll be a man 5 centimeters away from me and a passerby who knows nothing about windsurfing or sailing will offer me help or say, "You shouldn't be taking that big sail out. You're such a little girl." And completely, like, just trust the man knows what he's doing.
I love well-intentioned help. However, yeah, asking the question that's always a good sign, asking if you need help, but then really taking the word for it when we say that we don't need it. I had that a few times as well, pulling out my kayak from, you know, small girl, big kayak. Do you need help? Nah, got this. And they're always so shocked by the time I like yank it up onto my shoulder and then I'm just walking with it to my car and they're looking at me like, "Oh, okay, sure." Yeah. So that was your experience sailing then?
Oh, yeah, to this day.
Let's get into that a little bit. So sailing, to get to your level, you have to obviously do a lot on the water, but you have to do a lot in the gym as well. So how are those experiences different? And is it hard for someone who's like a sports person to move into the gym to kind of supplement their training?
I don't know. They are very different. And I still don't love the gym, despite having owned a couple. The thing about sailing is you never get it perfect because there are so many variables. There's your body, there's where you are mentally, there's how you're moving on any particular day. There's the boat itself, the waves, the current, the wind, and none of those things are ever the same for long enough. So you go out there and you're practicing changing of directions, you're practicing going around marks, and you're perfecting it maybe on that day in those conditions, and then the very next day you start over again. And your sessions are sort of 3 hours long and you're doing it 5 or 6 days a week. And in the gym, you're probably doing that 5 days a week too, and then riding on top of that and then sleeping. But the gym stuff is 15 years ago when I was doing it, it was very basic. So they were doing, deadlift, squats, sort of foundation moves. And mostly because I needed to be heavy, I needed to be a certain weight. And I don't think I was ever strong enough to do the kind of sailing I wanted to do. I think I'd been given, I remember my coach telling me I needed to do 13 full chin-ups and the best I got was 12. And the hiking out that you do where you tuck your feet under a strap and your knees are on the edge of the boat and then the rest of your body is stretched out. Because I was shorter than the other competitors, I used to have to hold my head out and I couldn't do that very long. And an upwind could be 10 or 15 minutes and I could maybe hold that for a minute or two. We had to do a 25-minute wall sit to practice hiking. And I think I used to get a book out. I got 15, 20 minutes, but I was always just short of the targets that the physios and coaches set.
People listening along here, I'm with you. 1 minute wall sit is like torture. This guy could just have this image of you reading a book, like kind of smiling to yourself, but like in deep, excruciating pain, holding that wall sit. Oh my God.
I can still do a few minutes to this day. I didn't find that one so bad because I could be occupied, but I still don't like isometric exercise. It's boring and it hurts.
Yeah. Which sounds like that's nearly like part of the biggest foundations of sailing.
Kind of, because there's also current and waves. So you're kind of doing all these little twitchy and pumping with your legs, and yeah, it's not still. Yeah.
And, we look back at 15 years ago training, you're in an athletic situation, but I'm assuming sailing's not a well-funded sport.
No, Daddy funded it. And I did work in a gym twice a week. So I was personal training. I actually have a media degree, and I never worked a day in the media unless you count that sort of thing. And then I went and did a 10-day course in personal training because I could work outside of training then. And yeah, I mean, I was doing pump classes with my clients, basically one-on-one pump classes, really bad personal training, but it funded the stuff Dad wouldn't pay for. So I used his points to get to Europe and America, and then he paid for the boat, but I had to pay rego and accommodation and feeding myself. And
yeah, wow, that's incredible. Just on the sacrifices that you make to be able to get to a certain level. I think that they're often understated.
No, but I never felt like it was a sacrifice. Like I spent 3 months a year in Europe. I lived in Sardinia for a month. That's not that bad. I mean, northern Germany, that's not fun. That was 12 degrees in the water and 12 degrees out, 2 wetsuits, cap. But like still, it beats the grind.
That's cool. That's really cool. And like looking at where training is now in gyms and functional movement, I know we always like a what if question. However, if you had that level of sophistication / knowledge and the ability to really tailor those gym sessions to the specifics that you were telling me about sailing, which sounds like we're pretty much not catered for at all. If you were training you now, what would you do different?
Well, I would remember that I was a woman because, so I had some sessions at NSWIS, and then I went and became a strength conditioning coach, and I worked at NSWIS for 6 months. That's the New South Wales Institute of Sport. And so there's a concept in strength and conditioning, which is the cycling your intensity. And the purpose is to prevent overtraining while still working towards a goal. So your microcycle is your week, like your weekly load, and your mesocycle is your monthly load. And they had us all on the same mesocycle. And to be honest, I'm 42, and it's probably only the past couple of years that I'm really gone into this. But now I realize that we should have all been on an individual mesocycle to match our menstrual cycles. And we would have been given a lot more opportunity, or we would have been working in harmony with our bodies. I mean, I just went on the pill, which has its own consequences, and forgot all about it. I do have sort of ongoing health problems now, which some groups would attribute to the pill, but you can't say it's causal. But I've also got a lot of injuries because my pelvic differences between a man and a woman were never taken into account. So as soon as I had babies and put a bit of pressure on my pelvis, I have a stage 1 prolapse, which is very, 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 very common. But I was so strong that it was my own superficial muscle strength that has given me a hernia, a hernia up. I also prolapse and stress incontinence down. I had a femoral and umbilical hernia out. So the intra-abdominal pressure I generate is just off chops. And there's so many ways of preventing that, like just by acknowledging we have a wider pelvis. So perhaps we need to lift and breathe a little differently to how you do with your male athlete. I have some resentment about that, actually, because they were supposed to be the best coaches. I was supposed to be the highest trained coach, and I never even looked at women's bodies differently. until my oldest kid is 11.
We're going to interrupt this podcast with a short message from our sponsor, Exercise to Experience. In collaboration with FTI, we have just launched our brand new Group Fitness Specialist Immersive course. We have brand new dates coming along where we can take your group instructing to a brand new level. Clients all over the industry are searching for meaningful group exercise experiences. They want the next step. They want to be immersed. They want to have an amazing experience time and time again. So find out how you can deliver amazing exercise experiences throughout your entire career, regardless of what you teach. Have a look at the show notes, click the link, we'll take you there. We want to help you grow as a group exercise instructor so that you're always going to have full classes and lots of member retention. I think that's probably been one of the biggest learnings, or the biggest, I don't even want to say learnings because it's eye-openings in the industry recently is the change that we've made to be able to cater for that more. However, it's still, I would say, emerging, not mainstream yet. And even what you said about your meso or microcycles, I would call that periodization. And you see that in, classic bodybuilding. It is really common. And if you've ever done any sport at any level, that's the way that you're training. And to make it match for females just means that there's more work for the strength and conditioning coach.
I feel like it is more work. Like once you look at those hormone fluctuations, it's blindingly obvious and supposed to be scientists, I'm sure there are some great coaches out there now and hopefully things have changed. But, back then, they wouldn't have even known if I was overtraining because I was just whacked on the pill and we didn't know what was happening with my cycle. Whereas monitoring my clients and athletes' menstrual cycles right now is like a major component of ensuring that they're healthy. They've got enough calories, they're getting enough recovery, they've got enough sleep. And it's really that recovery point that I think we forget. Like, people take steroids not because they build muscles. They take them so they can recover quicker so they can go back to the gym and build muscles. If you're nailing the recovery with your athlete, the menstrual cycle will tell you that this is a very healthy athlete. Whereas we just had no idea. Like, I could have been I could have lost my period and they wouldn't have known.
No. And, from my own athletic background, as a gymnast, that was non-existent. There were so many girls who had, a late onset of period just because of the level of training that they were going through, or had, like I said, just completely irregular or non-existent cycles because they weren't healthy. And, there is that limit when you are an athlete, you are pushing those boundaries, right? There's that limit between health and performance that you've got to push. What for you was the most special moment or one of the most special moments in your sailing career that you look back on like really fondly? Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, I was the first female to win heat in the nationals in a certain boat that I grew up sailing. So as a kid, girls have gone on to like win the whole thing. I just won one race. But that was pretty special. Like the girls were sort of finishing around 15th. And so I remember being pretty excited about that. I've met Kieran Perkins and Kathy Freeman. That was pretty cool because like athlete dinners and I can't think of like moments. I do sort of look back on the 3 years and I can feel the feelings. Like they were just the best years. Even though it was hard, it was all about me. I did what I wanted. Actually, cold too, and I did what it took, but that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, that doesn't come back again, especially after you've had kids.
I can't imagine that it would. We will go there. And so, did you have injuries prior to kind of when you mentioned you had your children and you started having prolapse and herniations? Was there a prior injury, or what led to that?
Well, within weeks of making it into the sailing team, I had back injury. It turned out, they did scans and there was a bulging disc there, and that bulging disc went on to plague me to the point where about 4 or 5 years ago, I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I didn't walk. I didn't even sit. I lay on the ground and I took all the Panadol, all the Nurofen, 2 Valium and 4 Endone a day just to exist. And so I think the bulging disc, I've always had a scoliosis. It was there, but I think it distracted from the fact that lower back pain is more closely correlated with emotion and stress, childhood trauma, those sorts of things than it is with a physical injury. So I think 95% is the number of people with chronic low back pain have some kind of trauma or stress. And that's something I only discovered like 4 or 5 years ago. And mostly because I didn't want surgery and I started looking for alternatives to this thing. So this disc has been there so long. First time it hurt was when I made the team. Now it makes sense. I look back, I was finishing uni, doing final exams. I just made the team. I was sailing every day, had a lot of stress. I was going like bang, bang, bang from uni to the gym, to the boat, to the, imposter syndrome. There was a bunch of reasons why I would be stressed and tense. And then the fact I had a bulging disc kind of meant that was all they focused on. And that I don't have pain now. When I do get sore, I treat it as stress and I go lie down and I do meditations and I cancel things and don't show up to engagement instead of going to the physio.
Really glad that you brought up that side of pain, because we both know that a disc bulge has no indication of whether you're going to get pain or not. 50% of people who have a disc bulge have absolutely no pain. And we know this is a scientific fact now. And I don't know if you've seen it with your clients. I see it time in, time out again with my clients. And I have this theory, particularly about my female clients, is because we are so stressed, we push our bodies and we repress a lot of those stressful emotions or don't necessarily have the outlets to have them going forward. But when we hit those stresses coming at every angle, that something's got to give. And pain is so complex that, yes, they label a disc bulge, but it's not that. It's not solely that, I should say.
No. So to get around telling my clients it's in their head, no, it's still real, but I just say you can dial it up or dial it down 30%. If you're looking at a biopsychosocial model with pain, 30% of it is physical, but we have physical reactions to emotions. Just think about what you feel when you're nervous, when you're angry, when you're terrified. You sweat, there's nausea, there's physical things that happen as a result of thoughts and feelings and emotions. So the other sides of that triangle, the environment you're in, the situation, but also your thoughts and feelings around that environment. So it's more complex than it's in your head, and it's more complex than it's a bulging disc.
That's such a great explanation of it. And I think that, we look back on those things in hindsight, but having the empathy of being able to go through that with people is something that's very different. And I think that's why a lot of people get a little bit fed up with that that very clinical, you have a bulging disc, therefore you must do surgery. It doesn't resonate with a lot of people because of just what you said.
This is hard and probably controversial, but it's almost like science is too simple because you have to measure one thing at a time to prove it is true. That we miss the bigger picture and the interaction sometimes between multiple things that are also true. But that's way out of my pay grade. Like I don't even understand that myself. I just understand that I don't know very much.
The more you know, the less you realize you know. Yeah, but I think that even just allowing yourself to be open to the possibility of that is game changing.
Well, I mean, I got off the floor. I learned to walk again by meditating.
Very incredible, to be fair. So when you hear things like that, for anyone listening in pain, that's what we want. We want to share these stories about because it's so you're in control of how you can help yourself to that point and how you can find people to help you with those issues?
I can send you I downloaded an app. You can put it in your note.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I'm all for that.
Called Curable. There's a bunch of pain scientists. You know it?
Yeah, I've looked into it quite a lot. It looks incredible.
Yeah, and they do like live group therapy that you can join in via video link. It's pretty good, especially if say you got endometriosis or there's a condition that you're not necessarily ever something that you got to live with. Then it just gives you a bit more power. Then we're a bit vulnerable to the medical industry. If we use endometriosis as a example, you have adhesions and scarring, and the only options open to you are surgery to scrape it out, which is more scarring and adhesions. So, yeah, it's good to try all the things and have the power. And then, if you need surgery, you're choosing it with open mind and having exhausted all other options rather than doing just what the doctor tells you to do because it's easier for them.
And, I suppose this is just a different type of doctoring, particularly when you're using something like that that's being researched previously and still being researched as well. Yeah, awesome. That's really cool. So how is your training now different from, obviously you had your sailing training, you were very intense. What has been your journey since then in your own training?
Well, I've always taken the strength and conditioning approach to this day, but I just took it to a population that I cared about, which was mums and now just women more generally. So in strength and conditioning, in my view, was about training for purpose, not training for the sake of it. So thinking very carefully about what movements I needed from this body today and why. And then I would even dive into what order we would do them in. And there's if you want to simplify it, there's, what are the movements they're doing every day that you want them to be powerful at, which will be completely different for a swimmer compared to a shot putter, compared to a long jumper, compared to a mum. And then there's what movements does this person do all the time? So what can I see in their body and what story does their body tell me that I need to unwind? So if you remember in the 80s, the swimmers used to have really round forward shoulders before the age of mobility. They'd have that real internal rotation in the forward shoulders. Now, I would look at that and I would want to unwind it. What is the opposite of freestyle? Let's just do the opposite to align the body more effortlessly. So those two approaches, mums are lifting all the time. They're deadlifting with an arm extension.
What's your definition of a deadlift?
Picking something up from a stationary position.
Just, I knew you were going to say that. I just wanted to, I wanted to put it out there. So it's not the deadlift that we know.
No, it's that, but with a stop at the bottom. So if you think of a baby doing their tummy time on the floor or changing a nappy or pulling something out of a car seat, a child, specifically a child, or the pram out of the car. Yeah, you're lifting something from a place of stop.
That's a great definition, in my opinion. I think it's awesome.
I think it actually is, if you look at heavy lifting research, their version of a lift is picking something up from a point and moving it to another stop.
Yeah, no, I thought that might happen. I didn't mean to interrupt. So training mums because they have to do lots of deadlifts and you're training purpose.
Yeah, so I do train mums to lift. And again, that's controversial because heavy lifting is a risk factor for pelvic floor dysfunction. However, the term heavy lifting is, we sort of use it interchangeably, but as a risk factor, it's not the same as what you do in the gym, heavy lifting. So heavy lifting as a risk factor, actually not that heavy. It's sort of loads of, 5 to 11 kilos more than 200 times a day. So it's either high volume or what are women doing in Africa where they're lifting still 5 to 11 kilos, but they're doing it all day, carrying things to market and that sort of thing. So in the gym, we have an opportunity to build them up from the inside. So acknowledge they're women with wider pelvises and a larger pelvic floor surface area. That just means gravity has a bigger impact So when her organs are resting and when her abs contract and build intra-abdominal pressure, you need to be equally strong in that pelvis. And because of the wider surface area, equally strong takes a little more work than a man's pelvic. So yeah, I train them to lift as early as I can, but from lying down doing Kegels to Olympic lifts, there's a spectrum. I don't go straight to it. And then I also unwind those lifts. So the fact they're forward breastfeeding or bottle feeding, they're forward doing deadlifts. They're like, you don't lift a baby up from behind your shoulder. You lift them up from in front of you. You prepare meals. You do a lot in front of you. So we do a lot of mobility backwards and sideways and rotational in their shoulders and the rotator cuff of the pelvis. Like, don't forget those, just to keep their bodies aligned more effortlessly. So I'm not after this might sound judgmental, but I feel like Pilates instructors have a very regimented posture because they're so mindful of every little muscle that they end up looking like field marshals. It's more of I just stand here like this and I happen to have my head balanced over my shoulders without effort. Kind of what we're after.
I like that effortless posture. That's kind of a nice way to look at it.
Yeah. I use alignment because if gravity's pressing down, all you have to be with the heaviest bit of our body on the top, it just has to be aligned over your center to be effortless. As soon as it's forward, back, left or right, then you have effort because the gravity's pushing it one way or another. The muscles have to withstand that pressure, and that's effort.
Now, I know that you use a lot of vibration training. Can you please tell us what vibration training is and why you use that tool?
So I like it because it's an environment. So I was a sailor and there was no machine in the gym for me to practice my movements. So that's a brand, sorry, whole body vibration.
That's fine. Power plate's great, but yes, okay. Whole body vibration.
The premise is it comes up and meets you in the foot and it drops away from your foot or whatever position you're in when you're in that environment over the vibration. So that creates micro moments of ground reaction force and micro moments of instability. So it's working on a reflexive level where your body reacts to what's happening to it, which in a boat is bloody awesome, right? Because you're running and you're moving and you're jumping and you're stepping and you're twisting and you're ducking under and you're hiking out.
And not only doing that, but then doing that with the forces of the waves changing your surface underneath you. Yeah,
waves, current, wind. It's twitchy. It's really twitchy. So before whole body vibration, I used to stand on on fit balls. That was one way of doing it. But the power plate meant I could get into sailing specific postures. So I could put a strap over the vibration and tuck my toes under, and I could vibrate my thighs and practice hiking like that. So 30 times a second, I was getting a muscle twitch as opposed to once every time you do a leg press. Same with your wall sit. Rather than doing 25 minutes, I could do 11 or less, even 5, and get the same amount of muscle response. So it was more flexible in that I could be in more specific positions that applied to my sport. So then when now training mums, or even I train myself, I'm going hiking in a month, I can choose very specific positions, apply the vibration and train the reflex. So mums' pelvic floors, if I get them in an unstable position, your pelvic floor has to synchronize and work with your body to stabilize. On a vibration plate, I can do that 30 times a second faster. So if, Kegels alone will cure incontinence in 80% of women, Kegels on a power plate will cure 80% of women 30 times a second faster.
Yeah, wow. That's incredible. That's cool. And I think vibration training is one of those aspects of the fitness industry that I would say is misunderstood. So when you're looking at just say general pop, let's not even look at athletes right now. Specifically, what type of movements is that really going to help? You talked about hiking. There's a lot of biomechanical forces going for a hike, right? So let's dive into that just a little bit.
we go hiking, and now I'm talking like pack on walking up a mountain hiking, because you also call leaning out from a boat hiking. I'm talking climbing up a mountain hiking. And the traditional way to train for that is step up and lunges. And that's okay, but that's not how you hike. So you don't hike up a standard step, right? There's inclines to varying degrees. There's rocks. So your foot and your ankle don't do flat surface stepping. They step with an angle out to the right, and then you've got an internal angle on the next step, and you're going up 10 centimeters on one step and 40 centimeters on the next. Some of them are so high, you turn around, you go down sideways. Sometimes I squat and sit down, and when you've got a pack on or you're on a rocky surface, you can't put your knee down. So you got to squat all the way onto your haunches. So on a power plate, using a vibration, it's just an environment. It means I can stand on it and I can step off to the left. I can step off to the right like a curtsy. I can step off to the front. I can practice going downhill. So the ankle flexibility you need to roll over your ankle and toe to step down a step is very different to the power and strength you need to go up one. Yeah. And then I've got all the variables inside of that as well. So like stepping far, stepping close, stepping with weight on my shoulders, stepping with weight on my hip, stepping with my toe out, toe in. Yeah, like you just got, like if you can do a squat on a leg press, you can multiply that by about 326 once we add all the different foot angles, all the different stepping angles, all the different loading positions. It's just more diverse, and diverse is life. And ultimately, we're training for a purpose, and that purpose does not look like sitting in a machine and repeating the exact same movement over and over and over and over.
Yeah. And the cool thing is what you've described to me there, even that's regardless of the vibration training or not, something that I believe still to this day is not common in the fitness industry. And you and I both work in circles. I suppose that would say that we train weird or train different or
word progressive.
Yeah. The way that we move our body isn't linear.
Yeah. The fact is I'm really strong. Even with all my injuries, I can still do chin-ups as a 42-year-old mum of two. And I'm not doing CrossFit. I'm going windsurfing, because the synchronization, there's so many aspects of strength beyond the contraction of your muscles. There's the coordination of your muscles. So chin-ups is not about your lats. It's about your forearms, your biceps, your lats, your abs, your back, and the coordination of those muscles. And because I do sport, I have great coordination. And I also have the mobility. I've got the shoulder movement that I don't have to overcome my own body's resistance to perform that movement. And I think the reason, well, in my experience and the hundreds of people I've trained, if they're amateur or soccer players, they'll be stronger than the guy that's in the gym every day, because that they're coordinating in space and time and absorbing momentum, gravity. That creates a more complex system, which means they've got more strategies to do the simple stuff. The stuff we do in the gym is simple. It's groundwork. The real strength, mobility, and the real use of our bodies is performed sort of outside in sport or in our lives, looking after kids and that sort of thing, in my opinion.
Let's just put that right at the end there. So you've been you had the ability to have a couple of industries under your belt. But if we're thinking about the health and fitness industry as a whole, if you could change something instantly without any repercussions, what is the thing that you would change?
The focus on aesthetics, especially for women. It's damaging, it's meaningless, and it excludes people. If the only reason to go to the gym is to get pretty, then, there's people who are morbidly obese who don't feel like they belong there when, they belong there more than anyone. With women especially, we're more than twice at risk than men of things like osteoporosis, mental health disorders. heart disease, autoimmune disease, cancer, like cancers, certain cancers anyway, like breast cancer. And exercise has a role in prevention, in survivorship, in just like managing symptoms.
Quality of life.
Yeah. And we're missing all those populations. So number one, it's bad for your business if you're a personal trainer not to look after these people and educate yourself in looking after these people. And it also means, I think there's, 2% or 5% of the entire population attend a gym regularly. And there's 95% of people who would have benefit, life-changing benefits. And that's not weight loss. Life-changing, like I can help you survive cancer, life-changing. I can cure your incontinence in 80% of you, life-changing, that are just not here. They're just not here.
And they don't know that they can, that's something that we use because of, like you said, because the industry is so focused. Yeah.
It's our messaging. It's our responsibility to change that messaging. Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. I love that message. I love that purpose. If we're going to go there now, that's so good. Claire, that was great. Thank you so much for your candidacy and being so open about your story. If people want to find you, we'll put some stuff in the show notes. But thank you so much for jumping on board today.
Thanks for having me. It's fun. And I'm so pleased we managed 45 minutes.
No glitches. I love it. All right. Thanks, everyone.
We are so grateful for your support and for tuning into our podcast. We want to make sure that you never miss a thing and stay connected with us even when the episode is over. Our Functional Training Institute newsletter is a great way to stay informed about new episodes, behind the scenes content, and exclusive offers. We would be honored if you could sign up for our newsletter and stay connected with us. You will find the link in our show notes. We truly appreciate your support and we can't wait to continue to grow and connect with you.